It's that image of Alexander sitting in the electric chair that I could not get out of my mind, for a number of years. It haunted me. It's like being a witness to a crime. How can I look away? This is a calling for me, and as a Quaker, this is what we believe. We believe you have a calling. You're supposed to do something whether you feel like doing it or not. And I wouldn't possibly have the strength to take this on my own.
I just wanted to objectively look at it from the perspective of a lawyer who's practiced both as a prosecutor and a criminal defense lawyer, and to see if there's, objectively, I thought there's anything that could be done, or whether he was wrong, and that maybe this child was properly prosecuted. And what Sam, I think, really wanted, this Susie Carter, who's the only surviving sibling of this murdered boy, is still living. And she's in her late 80s and her health is failing. And I think Sam wanted not only to seek some justice for himself and to kind of understand what his great-grandfather did, but he also wanted the relatives of this child to get some notion of justice or to get this story heard.
Today we're going to take a look at the crime scene at which the body of Vida Robert was found approximately 5:30 p.m. on Friday, October 3rd, 1930, in her bedroom at Glen Mills School. There was a pool of blood on her bed. Her body was found wedged between her bed and the window. There was a broken lamp that had been knocked over, a bloody left handprint left on the wallpaper of the wall next to her bed. Vida Robert had been stabbed 47 times with an ice pick. The fatal stabbings punctured her heart, her lungs, which may be why no one heard her scream. She had a fractured skull on the right side and 2 broken ribs. There were no witnesses to this crime. The school was run like a prison for boys. There was a matron living in the adjoining house next door who was also home at that particular time. She heard no sounds of alarm, no screams, did not see any witnesses coming or going. As bloody as the crime scene was, her 10-year-old son came home from school and was in the room for about an hour. It was a very small room, and it would have been impossible not to notice the amount of blood that was on her bed and a body laying next to the bed, pushed against the wall. Another puzzling aspect was that it didn't really appear to be a robbery. The only thing missing was the victim's keys, which she and staff members always carried around wherever they were going. There was $15 left on the bureau, which would be worth about $215 in today's money, and there was a man's wristwatch that was also left behind. Underneath the school's campus, there's a tunnel system that connects all of the buildings. So it's possible that the perpetrator could have come and could have left via those tunnels. At the beginning of the investigation, Chief County Detective Oliver N. Smith said this crime must have been committed by a strong man because the victim was unmistakably athletic and could have easily fought off a boy. For some reason, however, the investigators didn't stick to that train of reasoning. Instead, the authorities began looking at the boys in the school, and they came up with what they called an elimination list, in which of the 600 students, about 10 were identified as being out of supervision at any given time during that day. One of those 10 students was Alexander McClay Williams. And he stood out because he had a problematic record at Glen Mills School, not for violence, but for disobedience, not following rules. He was frequently punished. In fact, he had been a student there, an inmate really is what they called them, longer than any of the other boys. He had been there 4 years. He immediately came to their attention. During his first 2 interrogations at the school, he vehemently denied any involvement in this crime whatsoever. And it was ironic because the victim, Vida Robert, was one of the few people who was really kind to him during his time at the school. It wasn't until later, during the 3 additional interrogations by county detectives who were present during those early interrogations, and then later during his confessions at the district attorney's office, that he was finally coerced into admitting that he was the perpetrator of this crime. At the beginning of my research on this case, I just assumed that Alexander was guilty because I saw no evidence to the contrary. At that time, I wondered why a young person would commit such a heinous crime. I thought somebody else must have been involved, but it wasn't until later, till I dug more deeply in the case, and I read his school records, that I saw how small a person he was. He was less than 100 pounds. He was less than 5 feet tall. A small teenager like him could not have possibly done this. I also read that he had cognitive disabilities, learning disabilities. The most compelling evidence in this entire case is the 1930-31 trial transcript. Once I read that, I had this eureka moment, and I saw exactly how this entire thing unfolded, that no one had actually paid much attention to all of the details that the prosecution had provided. And so I began counting up all the actions that he was accused of doing. Within a 20-minute time period, it became quite clear to me that it was impossible. The only way he could have committed this crime was if he had the ability to stop time. It's a motif in America's justice system, or misjustice system, where black people make great targets. It's easy to coerce them, to torture them, to get them to admit to crimes that they have not committed, because there's a seed of hope in their minds that this will all get sorted out somehow. So somebody will find the truth and they'll show that I didn't commit this crime. But unfortunately, that rarely ever happens.
Before Emmett Till, before Trayvon Martin, before George Stinney Jr., there was Alexander McClay Williams.
He's the youngest person ever put to death in our state, who just so happens that he was a child and he was black.
Vida Robert had been stabbed 47 times with a ice pick.
The victim is a white woman. The attack was so hostile, with such an angry type of killing.
The fatal stabbings punctured her heart, her lungs. Another puzzling aspect was that it didn't really appear to be a robbery. There was $15 left on the bureau, and there was a man's wristwatch.
In the newspapers, they were saying the pad had been done by an adult male.
Glen Mill School was a reformatory. It was essentially a prison for boys in Chester County.
The authorities, they began looking at the boys in the school. About 10 were identified. One of those 10 students was Alexander McClay Williams.
Alexander had been out of supervision for a 20-minute period during the time the murder was committed.
They interrogated him without a parent or an attorney present. They were able to coerce him into confessing to the crime.
We're talking about a child who is not educated, was not articulate, but was living in this caged prison environment.
My great-grandfather, William H. Ridley, was the only attorney of color at that time.
So you have a lawyer given 73 days to try to prepare a defense for this kid charged with capital murder.
They needed somebody to be guilty for it, and I think that Alexander was an easy person to be found guilty.
Wasn't 1 year old when my brother died. I can't imagine what my mother and father went through.
His family, unfortunately, had no photographs of him. They didn't even know where he was buried.
Then we'll come to see all that we can
This
do.
family has passed through the fire, but they are still standing. And I commend you for turning your passion and your pain into power.
It's like being a witness to a crime. How can I look away?
My family always had the feeling that there was a curse on our family.
And 9 years earlier, Vida had sued for divorce in Michigan in 1921 on the grounds of extreme cruelty.
I didn't want to accuse my uncle of murder.
Sam Lemon is digging up this old case. It disappeared. It was gone. The trial transcript literally disappeared. And so that was my goal, to get us into a courtroom, get the story out there.
But on Friday, descendants of Alexander McClay Williams will come back to the very same media courthouse where he was convicted of murder 86 years later.
He said it was a circus show.
And he said, and you can't stay in the courtroom, you have to leave right now.
Yeah. It was 70 plus years ago. Like, and we're still going through that as African Americans, like, every day.
Alt-right, Ku Klux Klan, skinheads, they're just getting bigger and bolder and more threatening every day.
Because I think their feelings were, well, we would have never done this if we knew we were going to get sued or we would have had to pay money. Why wouldn't you want to give the family some money? Why wouldn't you want to justify some form of, I mean, it's damages, it's reparations, whatever you want to call it. It's really something that should be done.
If we could bring light to what happened back then, maybe we could stop it from happening in the future.
Yes.
Before Emmett Till, before Trayvon Martin, before George Stinney Jr., there was Alexander McClay Williams. It's that image of Alexander sitting in the electric chair that I could not get out of my mind, for a number of years. It haunted me. It's like being a witness to a crime. How can I look away? This is a calling for me, and as a Quaker, this is what we believe. We believe you have a calling. You're supposed to do something whether you feel like doing it or not. And I wouldn't possibly have the strength to take this on my own.
Rob Keller, a member of our bar, and Dr. Sam Lemon have put a lot of time.
I went to the Delaware County Bar, I met with the executive director. He was extremely sympathetic. The bar has always been very supportive of me. My research involving my great-grandfather, he got me connected with Mr. Keller.
I just wanted to objectively look at it from the perspective of a lawyer who's practiced both as a prosecutor and a criminal defense lawyer, and to see if there's, objectively, I thought there's anything that could be done, or whether he was wrong, and that maybe this child was properly prosecuted. And what Sam, I think, really wanted is Susie Carter, who's the only surviving sibling of this murdered boy, is still living. And she's in her late 80s, and her health is failing. And I think Sam wanted not only to seek some justice for himself and to kind of understand what his great-grandfather did, but he also wanted the relatives of this child to get some notion of justice or to get this story heard. And now all of a sudden the trial transcript and all the related documents that allegedly existed have now disappeared. So I was pretty frustrated. So I decided to file a petition in the courthouse in Delaware County demanding that this office produce that record. Somehow they all came back.
A real-life murder mystery, 86 years in the making. The family of a teenager believed to be the youngest person ever to die in the Pennsylvania electric chair is heading into a Delaware County courthouse this week.
I ultimately pursued was an expungement. And there's an expungement is where you're actually going into a courtroom and saying to a judge or asking a judge to clear the record, to destroy any evidence of a conviction, and to clear the person's name in effect.
But on Friday, descendants of Alexander McClay Williams and the attorney who represented him will come back to the very same media courthouse where he was convicted of murder 86 years later. Their goal is to clear Williams' name for his last surviving immediate family member.
If it was your brother, what would you do? What would you want?
I'd fight for justice.
Just fight for justice.
And I'd actually asked for this meeting before that date. They would not, the judge refused to see me, but it was somewhat humiliating. The judge was not polite to me. In very short order, said this wasn't properly filed, I'm continuing this, and thought I was grandstanding.
Now, Al was at a grandstanding trying to get somebody's name cleared, and they didn't exonerate him.
He would not let us go on with a hearing. He said he wasn't going to allow us to put on a show.
I think the judge was very disrespectful.
Yeah.
Dismissive.
It was hard. Yes.
He came out angry.
Yes, he did.
The judge, he said that Robert Keller, he had no right to bring this before the court because Alexander did not have an estate and he left no living heirs, but he had no children, true, but he did have a sister who was in the court.
Miss Susie, this 87-year-old woman, braved a snowstorm on a Friday morning to get to court 15 minutes early, 8:15 in the morning for this hearing about her brother, and the judge did not even recognize her presence in the courtroom.
But she's a very strong woman, and I don't think she was surprised, actually. I don't think she was surprised. I mean, she's been dealing with prejudice her entire life, and then I just think she thought, all right, it's just one more roadblock. Keller, good try. You know, it didn't work. And I wasn't seeking a total expungement, meaning that the whole white record gets cleared, because I don't want it totally cleared. I want the charges cleared, meaning wiped off the books, but I want the record preserved, because an expungement means they actually tear up and destroy those records. I don't want them destroyed. I want it to be a memory and for a document for people to read and get as emotional as I am when they see the injustice of how this trial and how this kid was treated.
No, in terms of the partial expungement, no, we're not satisfied with this. My goal was always, from the very beginning, to try and get this conviction vacated, which is what happened in the case of George Stinney Jr.
So I've never misstated to Sam or to the family what is actually happening here. I wanted to get into a courtroom as quickly as I could while she's still living. Anyone who wants to try to take this case further, I'm all in, I'll assist, but I don't want to spearhead that. I'm not going to take that on myself.
It's a stain on Delaware County, and then because if you open this door that this kid was railroaded, he didn't get a fair trial, his constitutional rights were violated, then you get into the issue of, is this a wrongful death? And then you have to think about, could the family sue for wrongful death?